Welcome to today's episode of the Medical Device and Marketing Podcast. So today I'm joined by Oscar and Becca. Welcome, Oscar and Becca.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for having us.
You're most welcome. So we're following on the theme that we've had for a little bit now about medical device websites. And why do we keep talking about medical device websites? Because they are the hub of all your information, and it's really important that we get this right. So one question that we often get asked is, do I actually need different pages for different audiences? And this might seem quite an obvious question, but I want us to look into this in a little bit more detail so people can really understand what we mean and why potentially you do or don't need different pages for different audiences. So why would we need different pages for a different audience, Oscar?
I think if you, like in any form of effective communication, if you're trying to talk to everybody, you're not talking to anybody. So just shouting and hoping that every piece of content you write is going to be applicable to everyone is going to make your content confusing. It's going to not be as applicable. It's not going to resonate with people as deeply. This is a fight that I have to fight quite strongly for along my career, that, you know, if any piece of work you're ever delivering to anybody, websites especially, you should only really be trying to speak to one specific type of person. That's the best case scenario. Now, I know a lot of people aren't willing or able to do that because there is a cost associated with that. You know, multiple web pages for multiple audiences, that does add up.
But that's a really interesting point, because you say there's a cost associated. You're absolutely right, there is a cost associated. But if you're going to then get a higher conversion rate and a higher adoption rate as a result of that cost, that actually totally negates that cost. But you have to understand that's the benefit to it at the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. You know, there's the risks there associated, but the ROI of an effective campaign is essentially zero. The ROI of a bad campaign is effectively zero. You can't afford not to do this. Is what I'm getting at. So I think that's the important reason why you should do it. And I think you should, you know, and no message will resonate as strongly as a message directed to you specifically.
And we see this actually in all other areas of marketing at the moment, in any event. Like, you know, some people do, but nobody would want to send out a massive email to everybody without segmenting your audience, because why would you do that? And it's actually exactly the same thing now. And we're seeing with, you know, AI, and Oscar, you've been talking a lot about sort of video AI, things like that as well, that there's so many communications out there and they're not personalized. And I think that's getting very tiresome for audiences. So the more personalization and the more you can really care about an audience, the much better they're going to engage with you. And that just applies exactly the same to websites. So it's just across the board.
So I think something that I talk about often is that you've got to solve a singular problem for somebody. If you're trying to solve all of their problems, it's sort of like a master of none kind of thing. You need to be in their head for solving a problem. And that's going to be very hard to do for a patient, a doctor, a surgeon, a nurse, a hospital administrator. You are unlikely to solve one problem for all of those audiences. So you're going to have to, and it could be, you know, the same benefits. I don't know, if, say, for example, you saved OR time, that's beneficial for all of those groups in a different way. A patient, because they're not on the waiting list for so long. A hospital, because they can get more patients in. A surgeon, because they don't have the backlog. So the same benefit solves different problems. And I know it's only a small variation in wording, but it just makes that person, that audience, feel like you understand their problem versus it kind of being a problem adjacent. So that's why you need different pages, or sometimes whole sites, but normally pages for different audiences. And I know that I use that example because people are like, oh, but that's the same benefit. But it isn't. It's the same. It's the same outcome, but how it benefits each of those audiences is slightly different and addresses a slightly different problem, which is why there's real value in breaking it down.
Because I suppose the cost of it as well, and you know, is if you don't do it, what happens? You know, and what does happen if you don't do it?
I think, you know, you run the risk of not converting on your website because people don't really understand how you help them, or you feel like it's a problem for somebody else and that you solve somebody else's problem. So that's the issue. You're not going to convert. And then, yes, you might have spent $5,000 on a website instead of $15,000. But if you spend $5,000 and make nothing from it, it's a waste of $5,000. Whereas if you spend 15 grand on a website and you make 30, 40, 50 grand on it, that 15 grand was well spent.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because when you first think about, so when you're building a website, and as Oscar, you said, it's expensive to start off with. And then you say, right, and now we need to add these extra pages. People will do a healthcare professional and a patient. They know there's a big difference between those. We need that. But maybe there's more nuances within these pages as well. But it's actually difficult to say, yes, but will it justify that end cost? Because you've almost got to see it at the end, haven't you, to believe it? Mm-hmm. So you've got to be able to track your website, really understand what the benefits are and, where people are moving through it.
If you're worried about cost, what I would recommend is not changing the whole site at once. Mm-hmm. Maybe, you probably already have a healthcare professional and a patient page for regulatory purposes. I'm assuming a majority of medical devices out there will have that. Why not then have a call to action page that is different for the healthcare professional and the patient? Because I imagine what is happening at the moment is you create those two different landing pages and then you send them to the same page, which then breaks the story for both of them. Like they're no longer, you're not answering either's, you're not continuing that consistent messaging for either. So why not start with creating two of those pages and then just seeing the difference in your conversion? Because when you see that will massively increase your conversion, that then kind of gives you the information you need to go to senior leadership to ask to then change an additional page, page. Because then you slowly see the benefits as you go. That obviously takes longer and you're not going to see the same benefit as you would if you did the whole website. But it's definitely something that you can do to get the benefit, see that the cost is worth it without jumping all in straight away.
No, absolutely. Oscar, would you add anything else on that?
Just track your conversions. Absolutely, so you can go to senior leadership with the figures and say and really prove that that they can't say no at that point once you've shown.
It's all about revenue, isn't it? If you can drive the revenue through the site, then that makes an awful lot of sense. I think it is personalization. The more you can personalize any campaign, the better you're going to do with it. And it just makes sense when you run into a website, as well. Why wouldn't you target each page for different ways? So when we talk about different pages, we've sort of really talked about the home page here and maybe a landing page, saying we would have different of those maybe for different audiences. But what about other pages? Like how would they differ for different audiences as well?
So ones I quite like are case studies. They're great for a number of reasons because, they can be written very, very specifically with your audience, your key audience member in mind, and coupled with a really effective long-tailed keyword SEO search that you're trying to capture. This can be a very, very effective lead magnet for you and your website. You do that for your 4 key audiences, write very specific case studies for them with the terminologies they use, the phrases they use. Because, let's face it, a surgeon is going to be Googling completely different things than a procurement director. They're going to have different problems, different phrases, different things they're looking for. And once they see a case study that's very well written, directed at them, and they can put themselves in the shoes of the person that's already been there, that's very, very effective.
And of course, then you're looking at getting email conversions as well there. So then you continue communicating with them afterwards. Yeah.
I think that there's also certain pages that you just don't need for both audiences. I think for patients, if it's a disease they've just been diagnosed with something, or they're looking for more information, they will need a lot more basic information than a doctor or a surgeon's going to need. So I wouldn't duplicate that for a surgeon. I think sometimes people just need different pages. Also clinical data. Patients aren't going to need anywhere near the level of clinical data that a surgeon is going to need because it's addressing different things. So I probably would have a clinical data for both people, but I wouldn't call it clinical data for patients. For patients, I'd probably call it things you need to know or evidence or something like that just makes it feel a bit more friendly and gives them answers questions that they've probably heard. Well, so-and-so down the street had this and this happened to them, addressing those sort of things. But then for a surgeon, it would be called clinical evidence and it would be all the papers and it would really look like 2 completely different pages.
It's really what we say all the time. It's understanding your user profiles and understanding what questions they're going to ask in order to move through their user journey. And that is what you need on their web pages. And it's also, as you say, what is the type of language that they're using? Because that would be different with some audiences to others. So really, when we talk about do we need different web pages, we absolutely need different web pages, because not only is it different tone, it's different information, it's different questions, it's different everything. If you're truly going to engage them, to move them through, to convert, which is what you want to do. So you've not only just got one different page, you've got a whole journey of different pages, really, for every different type of audience.
Yeah, I think as well, taking it off the website, if you're doing email campaigns, social media campaigns, you're probably already targeting them at different people. You're probably, when you go to events, targeting that at healthcare professionals, and you don't want to just have to send them to the same landing page time and time again. Like, you want to be able to have a whole range of resources that you can send, because sometimes the landing page just has too much information on it for that particular campaign that you're running, and you want to be able to send them just to the clinical data, but not lose all that hard work that you've done up until that point. So by having multiple different pages for each of your audiences, it just really gives you more variation outside of the website to then continue that journey and without having to be like, oh, well, it always has to go to this one page.
It's always the journey, isn't it? And as you say, at a congress, you might get a question and you can send them to a certain place on the website, but that should all be mapped out in your user journey up front. So you optimize your sales process, you optimize your lead generation process, you optimize everything.
This gives you more options in general, I think.
So the answer to the question, if I ask each of you, is, do you need different pages for different audiences?
Short answer, yes.
Yes.
Slightly longer answer, but not for all of them and not all the time.
Yes, but you do need, there's a lot that you need to really map out what that journey looks like. Yeah, and then they might coincide, they might not, but we need to do that first.
Yeah, and then, it's because also we've talked very much about different audiences in different types of people, as in surgeons or patients, but also you could even have it more niche. Like, for example, if your device can be used in an array of different surgeries, you want to then not just have surgeon as your audience type. You want to have cardiovascular and upper GI. Like, they're not two that you'd have, but if you have two different surgeon types, you want them to have their own problems as well. So you're going to constantly having to be kind of going level down until you're at all of the audiences. And in that situation, you might not need a whole web page for different surgeons, but I think maybe having jumps down that you can have at the top, are you a upper GI surgeon? Are you a gynae surgeon? And being able to jump to the section of information that's important for you. Because just think about the last time you were on a web page and had to read through loads of stuff that wasn't relevant for you.
I think we didn't do it. That's the thing.
You didn't do it. You just scroll through. And it's all about making the user journey easier. So knowing your audience and then creating that audience what they need.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, so if somebody wanted to go and have a look at their website now and say, are we doing the right thing, and what could we do initially to change that, what would you say, Becca?
I would start with looking at what is my journey for each of my audiences, and then if probably you don't have them, and then if you don't have them, create one additional page for that audience. And just see the difference it will make to your conversions, and then from there continue to map each of the pages that you'll end up needing.
Oscar?
That's exactly what I would do. I would add on to that, make sure you are using tools that allow you to know what your desired customers are searching for, and use that to help you make those journeys applicable to them, and really
about which pages they want.
Really, what questions are they asking? Make sure to find a way to answer their questions in your copy.
Okay, so I think my one would be, it's all about conversion. So just remember, with your website, it's all about conversion. There is no point in having a 1,000-page website if it's not generating you leads. That's just an awful lot of waste of money. So make sure you understand where your audience is going. But it's not just about where they're going. What do you want them to do? So if it is book an evaluation, if it is get in contact, whatever it is, make sure they're moving to that path in the end. And if they're not, change it.
Definitely.
Fantastic. So to you all, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Medical Device Marketing Podcast. We hope you found it interesting and understand why different pages for different audience groups are so important. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you next week. This episode of the Medical Device Marketing Podcast was brought to you by Podymos. If this conversation has sparked any new ideas for you, or you want to transform your medical device marketing approach, then our door is always open. Visit www.podymos.com and explore a treasure trove of information about medical device marketing on our Learning Centre. Or, better yet, get in contact with us and speak to one of our expert marketers, as they're as passionate about medical device innovation as you are.